Here today to let us rack their brains on ebook usability are three information professionals, Sharon Bailey, Maria Cipriano, and Jacqueline White-Appleby. So Sharon Bailey is the interim manager of library services at the Center for Addiction and Mental Health, where her responsibilities include reference, research support, collection development, and instruction for their staff, patients, caregivers, and the public. Sharon has an interest in collaborating with fellow librarians and education specialists to embed library instruction into clinical practice and continuing medical education. Prior to joining the profession, Sharon spent a number of years in the book publishing industry, including stints at McClellan & Stewart and House of Nancy Press. Maria Cipriano is a senior collection specialist at the Toronto Public Library and is responsible for adult digital collections, including ebooks, digital magazines, and other streaming services, or unofficially, the ebook goddess. She has over 25 years of collection development experience in public libraries and is a keen advocate of digital collections and is also actively involved in staff training and community outreach. And finally, Jacqueline White-Appleby is a librarian at Scholars Portal, where she works on license negotiation, loading, metadata distribution, and user accessibility for books and journals collectively purchased by Ontario universities. Before pursuing librarianship, Jacqueline spent many years shelving and offering recommendations in the fiction and children's departments at Indigo. She is the co-chair of the 2018 Ontario Library Association Super Conference, a longtime member of Choir, and a new mother. So I'll turn it over to you, ladies.
Thank you for inviting me. I just want to tell you emphatically, Toronto Public Library customers love ebooks, so I want to extend a thank you to all the work that you do. Our customers absolutely love you. I'm going to brag a little. TPL is the global leader for ebook circ. We kick everybody's ass, including New York City. Our customers downloaded over 5 million ebooks last year. It's pretty impressive. And the trend is upward, so I'm thinking we are going to be in overdrive, which we circulated 3.7 million this year. We're going to easily do 4.3 million just on that platform. Our ebook users vary. We have babies who use board-type books on iPads with their parents. We have seniors who use it. Seniors are big users of ebooks. I can't believe how wonderful it is now that they have access to the full range of publishing. Before, if you had a visual impairment, you would be stuck with the large print collection, which was, if you didn't love Danielle Steele and Louis L'Amour, you were sort of SOL. So now you can read 50 Shades of Grey, and they do. So we get people reading in all types of languages, and we try to buy ebooks in other languages, but the pickings are very slim right now, so we'd like to see more of that. Our ebook users tend to be power users. They love books. They read lots of books. They read across various platforms. They read print and digital, and they buy a lot of books. So when Overdrive, if the app is down, I get hundreds of emails in a day. They're addicted, and they tell me it's life and death. So, I move on it. They use the content, the ebooks, using a really wide variety of devices, some of them very old. They walk into our library branches with things we haven't even seen before. So you have to keep that in mind when designing your books, that they're responsive to screen sizes and various devices. We don't buy our ebooks directly from publishers or authors. We buy from ebook vendors, and our biggest vendor is Overdrive. We get our audiobooks and ebooks from them, and we do have other vendors. I just want to give a little plug, because I know I have a whole bunch of techies in this room. We have Safari Books Online, and you can get all sorts of O'Reilly Media books from us in the database. No waiting usually, because it has simultaneous access. And you can get your InDesign books, your CSS books, your XML books, so do take advantage of it. And we also have, wait for it, lynda.com for free. Tweet that out to all your friends. You're welcome.
But then I do have to move to Toronto.
Well, you know what? Your local library may have it. Call and ask, and if they don't have it, ask them to get it. It's as simple as that. We aim to please. So, what's popular in ebooks at the library? Just about everything. The most popular, of course, being the bestsellers. If it's on the bestseller list, people want it. Text-based books are usually pretty usable on most devices. And we adhere to, usually most of our books come one copy, one user. So that means we have to buy multiple copies if people place holds. And we use a 6-to-1 holds ratio and books get purchased while I'm sleeping. So, one day there'll be one copy, the next day there might be 5 copies of a book, and we buy lots of copies. So we have 350 copies of Girl on the Train in our collection right now, and all the copies are checked out still, even years later. So they're very popular. Genre fiction is extremely popular. Mysteries, romance, thrillers, science fiction. Romance is off the charts popular, and I think we have over 500 romance books with either the word Highlander or Highland in it, and it's still not enough. We have a patron-driven acquisition module, and once a week I run the report, and there's usually a whole bunch more Highlander books that I miss than they want, so keep them coming. Canadian indie titles are popular. Literature does really well, and we buy really widely from Canadian publishers. And if you're not selling to us, please do. We want you. Comics and graphic novels are popular. Children's more so than adult. There's still usability issues with some of the graphic novels, and I'll discuss later. Self-publishing is hot. We get a lot of our content through Overdrive because they carry Smashwords titles. So if you're an author and you want us to be able to buy your book and you're not carried by a large publisher, put it on Smashwords and then email me, okay? And because self-publishing is so huge, we really use our customers to help guide us in our purchases. They come and they tell me that they want this book, and I try and get it for them. Later this year, we're going to be launching Selfie, which is a self-publishing platform developed by Library Journal, and that'll give us much better access to self-published books, and we'll be able to highlight local content a lot better. Read-along books, enhanced ebooks are so popular with parents and schools. It really helps emerging readers. The books are looking fantastic these days, so thanks again for all that hard work you do on that. And the most improved, since I've been doing selection for the last 5 years, is children's picture books. Look at this book. It just looks amazing on an iPad. I know it was the introduction of HTML5, EPUB 3. It's a total game changer for us, because before that, we would have books that had text on one page, on the other half an image, and the other half image. It was a bit of a nightmare, but it's really much, much better. Same for books with lots of images, interior design, cookbooks. Our cookbook collection is off the charts. Like, I just can't buy enough. PDF. What can I say? We avoid buying it because our main ebook supplier is Overdrive, and PDFs don't work on the Overdrive app, and many, many, many people use the app. So if I buy something and it doesn't get a lot of traction, then I tend not to buy much of that. So we prefer EPUB. And we're not alone, other libraries feel the same. And it is problematic because there's some beautiful children's books and poetry books that are still being produced exclusively in this format. Other areas that need improvement, I was reading the Bruce Springsteen biography. I got to the pictures. I love looking at the pictures. I couldn't, in this particular case, I was like pinching like a mad fiend on my iPad. Nothing was happening. I couldn't read the caption, couldn't see the photo. In this day and age, there's no reason to group all the photos in one section, just like we do in a print book. It'd be great if you could embed the photos. So Bruce's baby picture should be in the section of the book where he's talking about his childhood. His marriage photo should be where, he's talking about his marriage, should be in context. I understand why you do it in print, because all the glossy pages need to be together. It's cheaper to produce. But really, print an ebook should not be an exact replica of a print book. Same goes for figures. I was reading Wolf Hall, couldn't for the life of me make the family tree work for me, and I had to lock the iPad because every time I tried to change it, the orientation would switch on me, and I was cursing and swearing and carrying on. And then I have a little fix for these things. I usually will screen capture it, open it up in the iPhoto, and then use it there, but it's kind of cumbersome, and a lot of our customers have no idea they can screen capture, and I can't imagine, it probably looks even worse on an e-reader, impossible to read on a smartphone. Another problem is maps. The first example, there was half a map. The other half was on the other page. I couldn't, no matter how I changed the orientation, I couldn't get it to work, couldn't read it. The second example is a very recent travel book, and ironically, you want to download your travel books because you don't want to use your data plan when you're traveling, so usually, you need to rely on the maps, and I couldn't read this map, and navigation was a bit of a nightmare. I still borrow the travel books, but it would be great if they were a little bit more, they were enhanced. For example, if you're reading a restaurant review and it has the address, you could tap on it and it would take you directly to the map, and then you could enlarge the map. I'm not techie, so I don't know if this is possible, but it would really enhance the user experience if you could improve the navigation. Like I said, some comic books cause us a bit of difficulty. In the first example, in page view, it's from Overdrive. I put it on my iPad. I could barely read the text, so I'm assuming on a phone it would be even worse. On an e-reader, terrible. But another one of our vendors offered the same book, and they allow panel view, and so that works much better, as you can see. It would even be readable on the smartphone. So just a couple more points. Metadata is super, super important. If customers can't find the content because there's a typo in the author or the title, the book doesn't get checked out, and if it doesn't get checked out and it doesn't get holds, I don't buy more copies, and the publisher doesn't see sales. The BISAC headings are, they frustrate so many people. I can't tell you the number of emails I've had about Danielle Steele. People go crazy when they're browsing and they're in the literature and they find Danielle Steele there. Or if they're in science fiction and they want pure science fiction and they get a whole whack of vampire romance, they go apeshit on me. And I say, I'm sorry, we can't change it. I'll send a note to Overdrive and they'll contact the publisher. So it does matter. If a book doesn't have a cover, nobody checks it out. And I know it was discussed at length yesterday, accessibility features are so important in books, and libraries have to comply with accessibility legislation. So if you can include those features when you're building the book, our customers would thank you. We buy very selectively one copy, one user books for Overdrive. It doesn't really make sense for me to buy a $5,000 technical encyclopedia and have somebody check it out for 3 weeks. People need to go in and out, dip in and out, get their information. So for that kind of material, we prefer databases like Safari Online, where we pay a fee, we have simultaneous access seats, people go in, use the book, get out, somebody else can go in and use it. But what we're finding is there's very little content, Canadian content for us, and there's very little community college and introductory university level stuff. We really don't, in the public library, need the graduate level books that the universities would use. So we would love to see more in that way. And that's pretty much for me, and I'm going to turn you over to Jacqueline, who's going to talk about academic. Thank you.
So, hi everyone, my name is Jacqueline White-Appleby, and I'm the Scholarly Resources Librarian at Scholars Portal, which is the digital service arm of the Ontario Council of University Libraries. We're based at the University of Toronto. So just to give you some context, I sort of said that I wanted to talk about the library perspective for librarians. So we locally load most of the electronic books and journals that Ontario universities purchase. We have about 49 million journal articles, about 300,000 commercial books. We also have about 500,000 public domain books, and we also load microdata, geospatial data, and research data is an emerging area for us. Oh, these are very, okay. That's okay. So our users are registered students, staff, and faculty at Ontario's 21 universities. Most of them are on desktops or laptops with very low mobile usage, and most arrive via their own catalog or discovery layer. So we have browse features, but that's not usually how users are coming to us. What's popular? So we don't collect textbooks, but in general we have scholarly research. We collect a lot of university press texts, a lot of Canadian university press texts. And so these are some examples. This is just hauled out from this month. We do collect a lot of medical and engineering texts as well. But for whatever reason, this month, social sciences and humanities are hotter. So our setup, how we actually get the content is first we work with publishers generally directly to license the content. We get as much XML as possible. We do get PDFs. Unlike public libraries, PDFs still tend to be the preference for our users. It's a bit of a chicken and egg thing in that we mostly have historically offered PDFs, but we do get we get XML books from Oxford and from LWW, and users really struggle with those. It's hard to know if that's just because it's a little bit different from what they're used to, but being able to download a chapter and print it is still what a surprising number of teenagers still want to do. That is the reading experience they're looking for. In general, we're getting ongoing content, so we're getting it. We're pulling it, or we're having it pushed to us monthly or quarterly. We write loaders to pull them onto our platform. We perform a lot of QA, as you can imagine. We get a lot of different types of XML files. We hope that our loaders can respond to them, but the DTD that we're getting changes over time. And then we distribute MARC records. I hope I don't have to say that in 5 years, but MARC records are still a really important part of how libraries are making their books discoverable. Not all of them, but the University of Toronto no longer takes MARC records from us. They're using other means to get access to their title lists. So what makes a usable ebook? I wanted to talk about 4 things. I don't know if all 4 of them are on here, but I'm going to talk about all 4 anyway. So enhanced metadata, I'm going to echo a lot of what Maria said. So enhanced metadata is really important to us. Excessive DRM makes it really hard for users to figure out what to do with the books. Ready for preservation, this is a really important aspect for us. And an accessible reading experience is essential. So this is a report that I don't know, have folks seen this report at all? It is called The Importance of Metadata for Discoverability in Sales. And this was done by Bacher, and they ran a bunch of tests on books in library catalogs and in ebook vendors. And they found that, I'll just read quotes because they found so many things. So titles holding 3 descriptive elements saw average sales 72% higher than those with no descriptive elements. The presence of a cover image alone correlated with average sales 51% higher than titles without a cover image. Titles carrying the full complement of basic data elements and a cover image see average sales per ISBN 75% higher than those who do not hold this complete data. So a lot of schools do not use catalogs anymore. They use what we call discovery layers, which are, they're like, you can sort of think of them as an enhanced catalog. So they have all of your catalog records, but they also have all of your e-resources right down to the journal article level. So you were searching all of the research databases, you're searching all of the library websites at the same time. So oftentimes you'll have somebody type in like climate change, and they'll get 900,000 results, and they have no idea what to do. So what we in the library are saying is like, okay, you want to think about what aspects of climate change you're interested in, like average annual rainfall changes in the last 20 years or whatever. So those are the kinds of concepts we're trying to get them to put into terms to search, because otherwise it's just impossible to find usable content. So when content has good descriptive elements, it's such a beautiful, easy process to bring a user to the content that they're looking for. Yeah. So a little bit more about metadata. BITS is does anybody here work in BITS? The Books Interchange Tag Suite. So this is sort of the sister XML schema to JATS, which is the journal article tag suite. And a long time ago, JATS was sort of a new format that we started working with, and gradually publishers started sending us journal articles in JATS, and now we get most of our journal content marked up in JATS. And so we've started transforming all of the XML that we get from publishers, or marks if we only get marks, into bits, with the dream that someday we will get bits feeds from publishers. We find it incredibly flexible. It has a lot of usable fields, a lot of fields that we pull out in a variety of contexts. So bits is a format that we've put a lot of investment into, and we're really hoping to see that happen elsewhere. Does anybody produce KBART files? So KBART is the Knowledge Bases and Related Tools, really cool name, and it's just a standard for sharing title lists, because I'm sure many of you have been in a situation where you've said, like, what's in this collection? Here's a list. Here's an Excel file, here's the CSV, here's just a website, here's a Google Doc. And it's very simple stuff, title, ISBN or ISSN, first published online, page range, that sort of thing. And the goal is to move towards a system where database providers, retailers, universities are sharing title lists in this format. And we do now share this with, for instance, Serial Solutions, which is among other things, they do open URL resolvers for universities. So when you see, like, get it here, and you click it, and it takes you to the actual article, it's looking for the volume number, and it's looking for the issue number, and it's looking for the author, and pulling those together. So this is a tool that is used to make that process simpler. So digital preservation is really important. For academic libraries, we are purchasing a lot of books that are Canadian scholarship, written by folks in Canadian universities about Canada now, about Canada's future, and it's a part of the cultural record. And we fully appreciate that, like, not for all ebook vendors, but for many of them, the point is to produce good books and to sell them, and then to produce more good books and sell them. That is their process. That's how they make their living. But when we bought physical books, we took care of the temperature. We made sure that people weren't stealing them. We're not very good at that. But with physical books, we had a very simple understanding of how to take care of books for a long time. When we talk about digital preservation, the rights that we need in a license are the rights to keep a local copy of that book, the right to access that copy in perpetuity, so we're not subscribing to this book, we're purchasing this book and it is ours, and then the right to transform that copy into the formats of the future. So, we have a lot of PDFs now. I would be very surprised if our students still want PDFs in 10, 15 years, so we need to have the right to change that PDF into whatever comes next. And the books need to be, for preservation purposes, DRM free, because it's not legal to remove DRM for preservation purposes, and it's just a lot of work, and we have so many things we want to preserve. DRM content will never be a priority. Good descriptive metadata, so we can see where there's gaps and where there's duplication, and EPUB 3 or PDF. Stuff that has been produced for Kindle, I have a hard time imagining them ever really being preserved, because we don't know what to do with it. We don't know the parts of it. Formats that we're comfortable with, that are widely used, are what we'll need. Accessibility, essential. So this is not my organization speaking, this is me, but I suspect we are going to have a very hard time signing licenses in the future to purchase content that is not accessible in very specific terms. So this means a well-tagged document with thorough text alternatives. I understand this was part of the conversation yesterday. I'm sorry that I couldn't be there, but not an image that says Van Gogh's Starry Night as alt text, but something that says, this is Van Gogh's famous painting, Starry Night. It depicts a town sort of lower down and swirly stars. But I literally Googled Starry Night right before this because I was like, I don't remember what's in it. But it needs to be well, and keyboard navigability. So that relates back to having a well-tagged document. So, when a user tabs from one heading to the next heading, that should always be the same experience. When a user tabs into, if there's like a pop-out box, they should always know where they are in the document and how to get back to different headings. That's all from me. I'll pass it over to Sharon.
Great, thanks.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sharon. I'm going to talk about hospital libraries, which are a bit different, and I'm not sure how many publishers have an idea of the kind of users we have, the kind of books that we would publish, or sorry, not publish, that's old, sorry about that, that we would make available to the staff, and any particular needs they might need, sort of content-wise or format-wise. So I'm going to help out with that a little bit, I hope. I didn't design this for better or worse, because that type is tiny. I just wanted to give you an idea of what the Center for Addiction and Mental Health is. It is the largest research and teaching hospital in Canada that focuses on mental health and addictions. There are several sort of, I guess, facets or areas that we cover. Number one would certainly be patient care. Hopefully you can see that we see over 30,000 people a year, 9,000 visits to emergency, and also the length of stay, unlike, say, a general hospital where surgery might be happening or any sort of convalescence. We're looking at upwards of a month, which is definitely a bit different. You'll see on the right, this is obviously just informational, but when people are being admitted, the primary diagnoses are almost pretty much split, 3 between substance abuse or addictions, schizophrenia and psychosis-related illnesses, and then also mood disorders. But there's a bunch of other stuff there, too. We've also learned that almost 2/3 of patients come in with more than one diagnosis, so I'm just showing you primary here. Just to look down to research, it's huge at CAMH. In fact, the librarians spend a lot of time supporting that research. Millions of dollars, hundreds and hundreds of articles are done. And then also we have a very large, as a teaching hospital, education mandate. We see residents, research fellows, nursing students, practicum students from any number of universities and colleges. We also have a lot of volunteers, and we try to make that a learning experience as well. So there is CAMH in a nutshell. CAMH Library, and again, I'm bringing this up just because I'm not sure if people know how hospital libraries work versus, say, public, especially maybe from an ebook point of view. So I just wanted to show that certainly our primary audience would be CAMH staff, which could include the researchers, could include educators who are helping with continuing medical education, but it also absolutely includes what we call clients, patients and families and members of the public who might come in or contact us by email or phone for assistance. We also serve professionals across Ontario. That could be anyone from a librarian at a different hospital or a public library. It could be a high school teacher. In one case, they were looking to have some stats to back up a proposal for a program they wanted to introduce in late high school for anxiety, which is great, of course. I also just heard from a policeman, a detective, just about a week ago. He was looking for the average maximum amount of cocaine that a heavy user would have in a day. Not the easiest thing to find, by the way. And I also really wanted to know why. Why do you want to know that? We're not allowed to ask, we're neutral, but fascinated. So anyhow, yes, and we also do the general public, which often includes people who have a very personal interest in mental health and addictions, family or friends or themselves, and we welcome them in person or otherwise. Here's what we have. Being a library and all, we do have print books, quite a lot of stacks, 40,000 more. This is pretty big for a hospital library. That's largely because CAMH by name has only been around for about under 20 years. It's actually a merger of a number of organizations, and that includes the Queen Street Mental Health Center down on Queen, obviously, the Clark Institute, the Addiction Research Foundation, and a number of other ones. So there's a lot of material of historical importance for research there. Our ebooks, of course, look a little slim, but that just grew by, I think, about 60 2 days ago when we bought some more. So the numbers are increasing for sure, and I'll talk about that. A number of the books are one-time purchases with usually an unlimited amount of seats, but sometimes fewer. But often, in fact, I'd say quite a lot of those are actually subscription. We pay by year for chunks of books that are then automatically updated for new editions. DVDs and AV equipment. We also have print journals and electronic journals, of course, and we carry the health science databases for researchers and people who need information quickly. So I'll just drill down a bit to our ebooks. It probably won't surprise you much, the subject matter, but I just wanted to say the categories are usually sort of reference and guidebook, manuals, handbooks, that sort of thing. The coverage, of course, would be mental illnesses and addictions. We might be looking at psychopharmacological interventions or psychosocial, like CBT and stuff like that. We're also really trying to pay a lot of attention to underrepresented or marginalized communities when it comes to mental health and wellness. That could be Indigenous communities, LGBT, and so on. So we are trying to play that up. And also, big trend lately is interprofessional care and communities of practice. And all that really means is trying to have some knowledge exchange between professionals to increase the capacity for family doctors or psychiatrists or specialists to be able to serve more patients where they are, especially people in rural environments, and also in the hospital, just to make the stay go smoothly, take advantage of each other's knowledge, and so on. The audience for our ebooks, as far as we can figure out, are primarily clinicians. These are people on the patient floors. Quite often, they're nurses in particular. We really have a very strong nursing contingent at CAMH. Here are our main publishers. I don't know if anybody is beaming or cringing right now to see who we have. We really only have a few. American Psychiatric Association, not surprisingly, is a biggie. The platform for that is called Psychiatry Online. I'll jump in now because I'm sure I'm going to forget to say it, that a lot of our subscriptions are based on IP authentication, not on login. This is not a single sign-on situation. It's not a library card. It's not a University of Toronto ID. So we rely on our users within a certain IT grouping to be able to go on there. There's probably going to be a little line at the top that says, "Welcome to the CAMH library," and they can just go in there without trouble. I just didn't want to bring that up right now. McGraw-Hill is strictly medical, so Access Medicine is our interface for that. Oxford University Press is a publisher, but in this case, it would be a clinical psychology area. And then Wiley, for reasons I can't quite figure out, goes through the Ovid platform. Of course, Lippincott, Williams & Wilkins does. Wolters Kluwer stuff is all through Ovid as well. Ovid is a huge vendor for us. All right. Here's our biggies. As you can see, the biggest is the DSM-5, which, for better or worse, is definitely the Bible for diagnosing, assessing, and managing mental illness and addictions. Those numbers, of course, look pretty dinky next to what we were looking at with you. However, we only have 3,500 staff, so that being dipped into that much in the space of a year is pretty good. Pharmacology is obviously a big thing as well. I, to be honest, don't know why family medicine is in there, because we don't have any general practitioners. But then there's also some textbooks at the bottom there that are used as well. These are kind of ebooks. This is a holdover, I think. You're using manual and handbook and stuff like that. But really, in the end, these are less and less being produced as print books. They're just holding on to the name. They're databases, and people are dipping in and out in the same way they would reference manuals. I don't know if they're going to let go of the terms. Some of these are still being printed, but less and less. And also, of course, when you print it and there's any updates, you can make those updates in a bit more of a live way on a database. Can't so much with printed books, and they take a while, of course. I think I'm going to skip one thing here. Okay. Here's my low-tech but hopefully compelling chart to tell you how we feel about things. So these are some of our top books, and then I've just put in the second column just to remind you the publishers and the platforms. What I will preface this with is, and again, IP authentication is such a mess for us. It's hospital security when it comes down to it. So sometimes even if you're on our, what we call staff devices wireless network, it may or may not work with the phones or with the tablets. It's maddening. But anyhow, you'll see that Psychiatry Online has nailed it. It is responsive design. You can download for offline access. It's like the Spotify of psychiatry or something like that. Anyhow, you can actually look at it through the Psychiatry Online panel. More psychopharmacology, McGraw-Hill Access Medicine, responsive design, great. Easy offline access. Maria was talking about some people doing screen caps like you and just basically doing workarounds. If you know how to do the workarounds, awesome. You could save to Dropbox, it immediately makes a PDF, that kind of stuff. No one's going to think to do that. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm even being kind there by being neutral. But then the clinical handbook, like I said, isn't really a handbook anymore, but it is a fantastic interface on the desktop and on mobile devices. However, same thing with trying to download content. And also, again, it's PDFs, which means no reflowable text. Black. And then, well, okay, Natural Medicines Database. No responsive design. It's very text heavy. It's ugly. If you really need in there to get an answer, sure, zoom in and type all you want. Absolutely no way unless you do some massive workarounds to get everything out of there. Oxford, I want to give them a bit more than an incredibly weirdly drawn frowny face, sorry about that. But they're, number one, they don't redirect, so and it's certainly not a responsive design. They have a separate URL for this, m.oxfordclinicalpsych.com, and unless you're doing this through Google, say, and it maybe comes up as a suggestion, good luck on knowing that yourself. Also, it's very glitchy. It didn't even show the Oxford logo, and don't really know why. It didn't show you anything, actually, that you were in a books area. So I thought, all right, goodwill. I type in a book, passable. But again, really nothing that you can do with it. But Ovid, I warned my sales rep last week that I wasn't going to exactly eviscerate them, but that their interface is horrific. I would never, ever, ever, ever use it myself, much less recommend it to anybody. I will go as far as saying don't, like not even just leaving it. It's so bad. I just cannot. Well, obviously I'm stressing it with my exclamation marks. Hopefully I'm getting that point across, but it's bad. Now, that said, and I haven't included a chart for this, but most staff, 2/3 of the people who said they use ebooks said they're doing it on their desktop. And like I said, the definition of ebook can be a little different. Sometimes really, like you guys were saying, you just want to dip in and out and get your answers pretty quickly. So just to back up a sec, we did a staff ebook survey. This wasn't actually conducted by me. This was by a colleague. She was doing it for entirely different reasons, but I was able to harvest a little bit of data with some caveats, and basically it's helpful, but not overly necessarily. So the preference of using print or ebooks, we didn't indicate what for. So a lot of people piped up in the free text area that they like ebooks for work, but they like print for home. A lot of people did the opposite. They like print books for work, and I kind of get that to some degree. It's sitting on your desk when a patient's in there, you're flipping through it, you've got your Post-its and all that. That's totally understandable. We also wish that instead of no preference, we'd put both, which would have made a little more sense, I think. But the one on the right is the one that that obviously would be important to us from a budget point of view, but more importantly from a patron satisfaction point of view. If both are available, which quite often they are, what would you prefer that we get? A lot of these answers are a little colored by the fact a lot of people didn't actually know we had ebooks. That's our own job to play those up. And we were talking briefly about discovery layers. We do not have one. Oh, heavens, there's so much to apologize for at the CAMH library. But let's stick with ebooks. That's their fault, not mine. But anyhow, you'll see that ebook is actually quite high, and I think that's good. That's great. This again isn't really solid data for me to be able to work with to make these purchases, but it is helpful. People basically were saying, I want a reference book, I want it to be searchable, I want it to have navigation both internal and otherwise, and the desktop is where that's happening. Responsive design does not allow for much of that at all, and certainly offline access is not happening. There's just some additional feedback. You've probably heard this kind of stuff before. I just want to let you know that users at a hospital feel the same way. Availability is great. We actually have 3 sites plus upwards of a half a dozen remote sites, so the fact that more than one person can use it. There's also the fact that if the library is physically located at one place and they'd have to get the book shipped, then that's a huge deterrent. So much positive feedback about that. Content, a lot of people were under the impression, and I'd say this is mostly right, that the content can be updated more quickly with an ebook. I think that depends. But they also understood that schedules take longer for print books, and so this is a plus to be able to be in there and feel pretty good about the currency. Navigation and searching, I tossed a quote in there because this is preference, but this is also awareness or not of usability and some functionality in there. And maybe if they knew more or these were set up in a certain way, this person would have said, no, this is great. This is very navigable. Like I was saying before, some clinicians have these things sitting on their desks, and so Post-it notes, they've lived and died by these things. That I was looking at and I thought, oh, okay, I could say that that's kind of a holdover opinion and these people aren't embracing technology and blah, blah, blah. But until publishers get the tablet or the smartphone design right, they're going to feel zero incentive to actually have this on the fly as they're visiting patients in rounds, or they are sitting there with the patient at the time and they need to remain calm and not look at a tablet and wonder, how to find things. Totally appreciate someone actually being candid enough to not only say, I prefer print, but to explain why. I don't know sometimes, and this is a bit of my history, having made ebooks myself quite a long time ago, there's a threshold for bells and whistles. there's, okay, there's functionality, and then it's just being crowded with too many options. So I don't know what the area is for these kinds of things, but I do feel, especially given our number of sites and the very immediate need for a lot of these things you can't run to a desktop necessarily, that I want publishers to have some sort of dialogue with people like us, with staff like us, but right now, I don't think they see a need. They don't see a need to innovate because, mainly, we need these. I'm really happy that the DSM-5 has fantastic interface. I'm kind of surprised, but I'm very pleased that they do it. But there's a lot of other publishers who are in no hurry whatsoever with books like this to actually make them responsive, much less navigable and downloadable on mobile devices. We'll see how that goes. Anyhow, the last one is just a very, very hospital thing, but not just hospital, because we talked about this. I think that cleanliness factor is pretty cool. It's your own computer, your own tablet with your own grimy fingerprints. Not everybody else who's done heaven knows what with the book. Okay, that's it for the three of us. I'm not sure who's here who can, there we go. Do you want to explain what this is?
What you're looking at is our live feed of holds and checkout activities. So usually if I check something out within a second or two, it pops up there. And I call it librarian TV. I spend way, way too much time with a glass of wine looking at this, trying to see trends. Actually, I look at this a lot because I do a lot of merchandising of the collection because I like to get older books going out again. And so I say, oh, look at that, that's a great book, so I'll feature that on our Overdrive homepage. And you will see everything, including some saucy things. Audiobooks were huge last year. Like I know in consumer sales they were huge, and they were off the charts last year for us.
You were talking about accessibility and that it's going to be a requirement. The lady in the middle, sorry. That it's going to be a requirement for the kinds of books that you're going to purchase in the future.
Mm-hmm.
All three of you talked about accessibility being very important quite heavily. What are your requirements going to be for the accessible content that you want to be produced for you?
Well, we have an aging population. So some people may have to be on JAWS readers, so the books should be able to work on as many devices as possible. Design, some things like color choices, sometimes things are almost rendered invisible, whether if somebody is using a reader where, gray on gray looks great, very elegant, but then does not work, at all. We even have to think of our own website as well. We have to consider these design features. And we support CELA Library, which provides books for people with print impairment. So basically, we buy a lot of the consumer things that they don't get. So, the text-to-speech is very important as well for people who cannot use print.
And I imagine fairly shortly we will have in the license, we want to see every table tagged and described. We want to see every image tagged and described, and we will be asking for test content before we sign the license. We'll want to receive that and to run it through, the most common screen readers, probably.
I'd add that just specifically for the kinds of people who are using ours, I think sometimes accessibility might be overlooked in sort of a unconscious sense of, oh, you're doctors or nurses, you shouldn't be having issues or something like that. And it's something we're incredibly mindful of at CAMH, is making zero assumptions about anyone's degree of ability to access content. Something, just to harken back to the bells and whistles thing I was talking about, we get pop-ups going on, not ad pop-ups, but something that might look great on a desktop. It's like, highlight this term, and up it comes. You can't print it. You can only print the thing behind it. Sometimes you can zoom in, and that's wonderful, but then when you print it, it's tiny. I don't know how much control designers would have over that kind of thing, but to me, scalability is a massive thing. Contrast is massive, but also just trying to rein in the bells and whistles that work really well on a desktop and maybe a tablet, but not when people are on the fly and just need some information.